Today, Professor Dr. Manoj Kumar will give lecture on the international business management. This is in the syllabus of the management courses for the BBA and the MBA. The basic objective of this course is to provide understanding to the student with the global dimension of the management. Student will understand the global dimensions of the management. Unit 1, overview international business, introduction, concept, definition, scope, trends, challenges, and opportunity. Nature, meaning, and importance of the international competitive advantage. Multidimensional view of competitiveness, financial perspective, international monetary system, and financial market. International monetary system and the financial market. International Monetary Fund, IMF, World Bank, IBRD, IFC, IDA. Existing international arrangement, globalization and the foreign investment, introduction FDI, national FDI policy framework, FPI, impact of the globalization. Unit 2, Lecture 12, Globalization, Technology and its impact, enhancing technological capability, technology generation, technology transfer, diffusion, dissemination and the spillover, rationale for the globalization, liberalization and unification of the world economics, international business theory, trade barriers, tariff and the non-tariff barriers. Unit 3, strategy making and international business. Structure of the global organization, types of the strategy used in strategic planning for achieving global competitive advantage, meaning, concept and scope of the distincting competitive advantage, financial integration, cross-border merger and acquisition. Unit 4, socio-cultural environment, managing diversity within and cross-culture, country risk analysis, macro-environmental risk assessment, need for the risk evaluation, corporate governance, globalization with the social responsibility, introduction, social responsibility of the TNC, recent development in the corporate social responsibility and the policy implication. Global human resource management, selection, development, performance appraisal and the compensation, motivating employee in the global context and managing groups across culture, multicultural management. Unit 5, definition of the international business, the exchange of the goods and services among the individual and businesses in the multiple country. A specific entity such as a multinational corporation or international business company that engage in the business among the multiple country. International business conduct business transaction all over the world. These transactions include the transfer of the goods, services, technology, managerial knowledge, and capital to the other country. And international business involve export and imports. International business. International business consists of the transactions that are devised and carried out across national border to satisfy the objectives of the individual, company, and organization. These transactions take on various forms which are often interrelated. Primary type of the international business are the export-import trade and the direct foreign investment. The latter is carried out in the varied forms, including wholly owned subsidiary and the joint venture. Additional types of the international business are licensing, franchising, and the management contracts. The definition of the international business focus on the transaction, the use of these term recognizes that doing business internationally is an activity, not merely a passive observation. Closely linked to the activity is term satisfaction. It is crucial that the participants in the international business are satisfied only if they feel they are better off after the transaction than they were before. Will individual business transaction develop into a business relationship? The fact that the transactions are across national border highlights a key difference between domestic and international business. The international executive is subject to a new set of the macro environmental factors, to different constant and to quite different conflict resulting from the different laws, culture, and the society. The basic principle of the businesses are still relevant, but their application, complexity, and intensity vary substantially. And international business have many options for doing business. It includes exporting goods and the services, giving license to produce goods in the host country, starting a joint venture with a company, opening a branch for producing and distributing goods in the host country, providing managerial service to company in the host country. Today, business is acknowledged to the international, and there is a general expectation that this will continue for the foreseeable future. International business may be defined simply as business transactions that take place across national border. This broad definition includes the very small firms that export or import a small quantity to only one country, as well as the very large global firm with the integrated operation and strategic alliances around the world. Within this broad array, distinctions are often made among different types of the international firms, and these distinctions are helpful in understanding a firm's strategy, organization, and the functional decision. For example, its financial, administrative, marketing, and human resources and operation decision. One decision that can be helpful is the distinction between the multi-domestic operation with the independent subsidiary, which act essentially as the domestic firm, and the global operation with integrated subsidiary, which are closely related and interconnected. These may be thought of as two ends of the continuum with the many possibilities in between. Firms are likely to be at one end of the continuum, though as they often combine aspects of the multi-domestic operation with the aspects of the global operation. International business grew over the last half of the 20th century, partly because of the liberalization of both trade and investment, and partly because doing business internationally had become easier. In terms of the liberalization, general agreement on tariff and trade negotiation rounds results in the trade liberalization, and this was continued with the formation of the World Trade Organization in 1995. At the same time, worldwide capital movements were liberalized by the most government, particularly with the advent of the economic fund transfer. In addition, the introduction of the new European monetary unit, the euro, into the circulation has in January 2002 has impacted international business economically. The euro is the currency of the European Union membership in the March 2005 of the 25 country, and the euro replaced each country's previous currency. As of yearly 2005, the United States dollar continues to struggle against the euro, and the impacts are being felt across industry worldwide. In terms of the ease of doing business internationally, two major forces are important: technological development, which make global communication and transportation relatively quick and convenient, and the disappearance of the substantial part of the communist world, opening many of the world's economy to the private business. Domestic versus international business. Domestic and international enterprises in both the public and private sectors share the business objective of functioning successfully to continue operation. Private enterprises seek to function profitability as well, Why then is the international business different from the domestic? The answer lies in the differences across the border. Nation states generally have unique government system, laws and regulation, currencies, taxes and duty, and so on, as well as different cultures and the practices. An individual traveling from his home country to a foreign country needs to have the proper documents to carry the foreign currency and to be able to communicate in the foreign country, to be dressed appropriately, and so on. Doing business in a foreign country involves similar issues and is thus more complex than doing business at home. The following section will explore some of these issues. Specifically, comparative advantage is introduced and the international business environment is explored and forms of the international entry are outlined. Theories of the international trade and investment. In order to understand international business, it is necessary to have a broad conceptual understanding of why trade and investment across national borders take place. Trade and investment can be examined in terms of the comparative and advantage of the nation. Comparative advantage suggests that each nation is relatively good at producing certain products or the services. This comparative advantage is based on the nation's abundant factors of the production, land, labor, and capital, and a country will export those product services that use its abundant factors of the production intensely. Similarly, consider only the two factors of the production, labor and capital, and two country X and Y. If country X has a relative abundance of the labor and country Y is a relative abundance of the capital, country X should export product services that use labor extensively. Country Y should export product services that use capital intensively. This is very simplistic explanation. Of course, there are many more factors of the production of the varying quality, and there are many additional influence on the trade, such as a government regulation. Nevertheless, it is a starting for understanding what nations are likely to export or import. The concept of the comparative advantage can also help explain investment flow. Generally, capital is the most mobile of the factors of the production and can move relatively easily from one country to another. Other factors of the production, such as land and labor, either don't move or are less mobile. The result is that the where capital is available in one country and it may be used to invest in other country to take advantage of their abundant land or the labor. Firms will develop expertise and the firm specific advantage based initially on the abundant resources at home. But as resource needs change, the stage of the product life cycle mature and home market become saturated, these firms find it advantageous to invest internationally. The international business environment. International business is different from the domestic business because the environment changes when a firm crosses international border. Typically, a firm understands its domestic environment quite well, but is less familiar with the environment in other country and must invest more time and resources into understanding the new environment. The following consider some of the important aspects of the environment that change internationally. The economic environment can be very different from one nation to the another. Countries are often divided into the three main categories: the more developed, industrialized, the less developed or third world, and newly industrializing or the emerging economy. There are the three main categories are developed, are there: more developed or the industrialized, less developed or the third world, and the newly industrializing emerging economy. Within each category, there are major variation, but overall, the more developed country are the rich country, and the less developed, the poor ones, and the newly industrializing, those moving from poor to richer. These distinctions are usually made on the basis of the gross domestic product per capita, GDP per capita. Better education, infrastructure, and technology, healthcare, and so on are also often associated with the higher level of the economic development. In addition to the level of economic development, countries can be classified as free market Centrally planned or the mixed. Free market economy are those where government intervenes minimally in the business strategy and the market forces of supply and demand are allowed to determine production and prices. Centrally planned economy are those where the government determines production and prices based on the forecast of the demand and desired level of the supply. Mixed economy are those where some activity are left to market forces and some for the national and individual welfare reasons. The government control in the late 20th century there has been a substantial move to the free market economy, but the People's Republic of the China, the world's most populous country, along with a few others, remain largely centrally planned economy, and most countries maintain some government control of the business activity. Clearly, the level of the economic activity combined with the education, infrastructure, and so on, as well as the degree of the government control of the economy, affect virtually all aspects of the doing business, and a firm needs to understand this environment if it is to operate successfully internationally. The political environment refers to the type of the government relationship with business, and the political risk in a country. Doing businesses internationally thus implies dealing with the different types of the government relationship and level of the risk. There are many different types of the political system. For example, multi-party democracy, one-party states, constitutional monarchy, and dictatorship, military and non-military also. Government change in the different ways, for example, by the regular election, occasional election, death, corps, and war. Government business relationship also differ from country to country. Business may be viewed positively as the engine of the growth. It may be viewed negatively as the exploiter of the worker, or somewhere in between as providing both benefits and the drawbacks. A specific government business relationship can also vary from positive to negative depending on the type of the business operation involved and the relationship between the people of the host country and the people of the home country. To be effective in foreign location, an international firm relies on the goodwill of the foreign government and needs to have a good understanding of all of these aspects of the political environment. A particular concern of the international firm is the degree of the political risk in a foreign location. Political risk refer to the likelihood of the government activity that has unwanted consequences for the firm. These consequences can be dramatic, as in forced disinvestment, where the government requires the firm gives its asset, or more moderate, as in the unwelcome regulation or the inferences in operation. In many cases, the risk occurs because of the uncertainty about the likelihood of the government activity occurring. Generally, risk is associated with the instability and a country is thus seen as a more risky if the government is likely to change unexpectedly. If there is social unrest, if there are riots, revolution, war, terrorism, and so on. Firms naturally prefer countries that are stable and that present little political risk, but the returns need to be weighed against the risk, and the firm often do business in country where the risk is relatively high. In this situation, firms seek to manage the perceived risk through the insurance, ownership, and the management choices, supply and the market control, financing arrangement, and so on. In addition, the degree of the political risk is not solely a function of the country, but depends on the company and its activity as well. A risky country for one company may be relatively safe for the another. The cultural environment is one of the critical components of the international business environment and one of the most difficult to understand. This is because the cultural environment is essentially unseen. It has been described as a shared, commonly held body of the general beliefs and values that determine what is right for the one group. According to the Culhane and the Stockwell, national culture is described as the body of the general beliefs and values that are shared by a nation. Beliefs and values are generally seen as formed by the factors such as history, language, religion, geographic location, government, and education. Thus, firms begin a cultural analysis by seeking to understand these factors. Firms want to understand what beliefs and value they may find in country where they do business and where they do business. And a number of models of the cultural value have been proposed by the scholars. The most well-known is that developed by the Hofstede in the 1980. This model proposes four dimensions of the cultural value, including individualism, uncertainty, avoidance, and the power distance and the masculinity. Individualism is the degree to which a nation values and encourages individual action and decision making. Uncertainty avoidance is the degree to which a nation is willing to accept and deal with the uncertainty. Power distance is the degree to which a nation accepts and sanctions differences in power. And masculinity is the degree to which a nation accepts traditional male value or the traditional female value. This model of the cultural value has been used extensively because it provides data for the wide area of the country. Many academics and the manager found this model helpful in exploring management approaches that would be appropriate in different cultures. For example, in a nation that is high on individualism, one expects individual goals, individual tasks, and individual reward system to be effective, whereas the reverse would be the case in a nation that is low on individual. While this model is popular, there have been many attempts to develop more complex and inclusive models of the culture. The competitive environment can also change from country to country. This is partly because of the economic, political, and cultural environment. These environmental factors help determine the type and degree of competition that exists in the given country. Competition can come from a variety of the sources. It can be public or the private sector, come from a large or a small organization, be domestic or the global, and stem from the traditional or the new competitors. For the domestic firm, the most likely source of the competition may be well understood. The same is not the case when one moves to compete in a new environment. For example, in the 1990s, in the United States, most business had privately owned and competition has among private sector companies, while in the People's Republic of China, businesses were owned by the state. Thus, US company in the PRC could find itself competing with the organization owned by the state entity, such as a PRC army. This could change the nature of the competition dramatically. The nature of competition can also change from place to place as the following state. Competition may be encouraged and accepted or disencouraged in favor of the cooperation. Relations between buyers and sellers may be friendly or hostile. Barriers to entry and exist may be low or the high. Regulation may permit or prohibit certain activity. To be effective internationally, firms need to understand these competitive issues and assess their impacts. An important aspect of the competitive environment is the level and acceptance of the technological innovation in the different countries. The last decade of the 20th century saw major advances in the technology, and this is the continuing in the 21st century. Technology is seen as giving firm a competitive advantage. Hence, firm compete for access to the newest in the technology, and international firm technology transfer to be globally competitive. It is easier than ever for the even small business to have a global presence thanks to the internet, which greatly expand their exposure, their market, and their potential customer base. For economic, political, and cultural reasons, some countries are more accepting of the technological innovation, others less accepting. International entry choice. International firms may choose to do business in a variety of ways. Some of the most common include export, licenses, contract, and turnkey operation, franchises, joint venture, wholly owned subsidiary, and the strategic alliances. Exporting is often the first international choice for the firms, and many firms rely substantially on export throughout their history. Exports are seen as relatively simple because the firm is relying on the domestic production, can use a variety of the intermediary to assist in the process, and expects its foreign outcome to deal with the marketing and sales issue. Many firms begin by the exporting reactively, then become proactive when they realize the potential benefit of addressing a market that is much larger than the domestic one. Effecting exporting requires attention to detail if the process is to be successful. For example, the exporter needs to decide if when to use different intermediary, select an appropriate transportation method, preparing export documentation, prepare that product, and arrange acceptable payment terms, and so on. Most importantly, the exporter usually leaves the marketing and sales to the foreign customer, and these may not receive the same attention as if the firm itself undertook these activities. Larger exporters often undertake their own marketing and establish sales subsidiary in important foreign markets. Licenses are granted from a licensor to a license for the rights to some intangible property, patent processes, copyright, trademarks for agreed on compensation, a royalty payment. Many companies feel that the production in a foreign country is desirable, but they don't want to undertake this production themselves. In this situation, the firm can grant a license to a foreign firm to undertake the production. This licensing agreement gives access to the foreign market through the foreign production without the necessity of investing in the foreign location. This is particularly attractive for a company that does not have the financial or the managerial capacity to invest and undertake foreign production. The major advantage to a licensing agreement is the dependence on the foreign producer or the quality, efficiency, and the promotion of the product. If the license is not effective, this reflects on the licensor. In addition, the licensor risks losing some of its technology and creating a potential competitor. This means the licensor should choose a license carefully to be sure the license will perform at an acceptable level and it's trustworthy. The agreement is important to both the party and should ensure that both parties benefit equitably. Contracts are used frequently by firms that provide specialized services such as management, technical knowledge, engineering, information technology, education, and so on, in a foreign location for a specified time period and the fee. Contracts are attractive for firms that have talents not being fully utilized at home and in demand in the foreign location. They are relatively short term, allowing for the flexibility, and the fee is usually fixed so that the revenues are known in advance. The major drawback is their short-term nature, which means that the contracting firm needs to develop new business constantly and negotiate new contracts. This negotiation is time-consuming, costly, and requires skill at cross-cultural negotiation. Revenues are likely to be uneven, and the firm must be able to weather periods when no new contract materializes. Turnkey contract are a specific kind of the contract where a firm constructs a facility, starts operation, train local personnel, then transfer and facility turn over the key to the foreign owner. These contracts are usually for very large infrastructure projects such as dams, railways, and airports, and involve substantial financing. Thus, they are often financed by the international financial situation such as a World Bank. Companies that specialize in these projects can be very profitable, but they require a specialized expertise. Further, the investment in obtaining these projects is very high. So only a relatively small number of the large firms are involved in these projects, and often they involve a syndicate or collaboration of the firms. Similar to the licensing agreement, franchise involves the sale of the right to operate a complete business operation. Well-known examples include independently owned food restaurants like McDonald's and the Pizza Hut. A successful franchise requires control over something that others are willing to pay, or such a name, set of the product or way of doing things, and the ability of willing and able franchises. Finding franchises and maintaining control over the franchise asset in the foreign country can be difficult. To be successful at the international franchising firm need to ensure they can accomplish both of these. Joint ventures involve share ownership in the subsidiary company. A joint venture allows a firm to take an investment position in a foreign location without taking on the complete responsibility for the foreign investment. Joint venture can take many forms. For example, there can be two partners or more partners can share equally or have varying stake. Partners can come from the private sector or the public. Partner can be silent or active. Partners can be local or intentional. The decision on what to share, how much to share, and with whom to share, and how long to share are the all important to success of a joint venture. And in the case of the joint venture, what to share, these are the decision of the crucial importance is there. What to share is there, how much to share is there, with whom to share there, and how long to share are important to the success of the joint venture. Joint venture have been likened to the marriage, with suggestion that choice of a partner is critically important. This is the important decision is there. Many joint venture fails because partners have not agreed on their objective and find it difficult to work out conflicts. This is the important point is there. Many joint venture fails because partners have not agreed on their objectives. The objectives of the both must be the same. The goals of the both must be same. Missions of the both will be must be the same, and find it difficult to work out conflict. Joint ventures provide an effective international entry when partners are complementary, but firms need to be thorough in their preparation for a joint venture. This is the important decision for the joint venture. And how much to share, with whom to share, and how long to share, all important success of the joint venture. This is the important decision is there. Only one subsidiary involved the establishment of the business in the foreign location, which are owned by entirely by the investing firm. This entry choice puts the investor parent in the full control of operation, but also requires the ability to provide the needed capital and the management, and to take on all the risk where control is important and the firm is capable of the investment. It is often the preferred choice. Other firms feel a need for a local input from the local partner or specialized input from the international partner, and opt for the joint venture or the strategic alliances, if where they are financially capable of the 100% ownership. Only one subsidiary involved the establishment of business in the foreign location, which are owned entirely by the investing firm. This entry choice puts the investor parent in the full control of operation, but also requires the ability to provide the needed capital and management, and to take on all the risk where control is important and the firm is capable of the investment. It is often the preferred choice. Strategic alliances are arrangement among the company to cooperate for the strategic purposes. Licenses and joint ventures are forms of the strategic alliances, but are often differentiated from them. Strategic alliances can involve no joint ownership or a specific license agreement, but rather two companies working together to develop a synergy. Joint advertising programs are a form of the strategic alliances, as are joint research and the development program. Strategic alliances seem to make some more vulnerable to the loss of the competitive advantage, especially where small firms ally with the larger firm. In spite of this, many smaller firms find strategic alliances allow them to enter the international arena, and they could not do so alone. International business grew substantially in the second half of the 20th century, and this growth is likely to continue. The international environment is complex, and it is very important for firms to understand this environment and make effective choices in this complex environment. The previous discussion introduced the concept of the comparative advantage, explored some of the important aspects of the international business environment, and outlined the major international entry choices available of firm. The topic of the international business is itself complex, and this short discussion serves only to introduce a few ideas on the international business issue. Features of the international business. Large scale operation. In the international business, all the operations are conducted on a very huge scale. Production and marketing activity are conducted on a large scale. It is first sell its goods in the local market, then the surplus goods are exported. Integration of the economy. International business integrates the economies of the many countries. This is because of its huge finance from the one country, labor from the another country, and the infrastructure from the another country. It designs the product in one country, produces its part in the different country, and assembles the product in the another country. It sells the product in the many countries in the international market. Dominated by the developed country and the MNC. International business is dominated by the developed country and their multinational corporation. At present, MNC from the USA, Europe, and Japan dominate fully control foreign trade. Fully control foreign trade. Japan dominate in the different country. In India also, Japan dominate. This is because they have large financial and other resources. They also have the best technology and research development R&D. They have highly skilled employee and manager because they give very high salary and other benefits. Therefore, they produce good quality goods and services at the low prices. This helps to them to capture and dominate the world market. Benefits to the participating country. International business gives benefit to the all participating country. However, the developed country get the maximum benefits. The developing poor country also gets benefit. They get foreign capital and technology. They get rapid industrial development. They get more employment opportunity. All this result in economic development of the developing country. Therefore, developing country open up their economies through the liberal economic policy. Keen competition. International business has to face too much competition in the world market. The competition is between the unequal partner at developed and developing country. In this keen competition, developed country and their MNC are in the favorable position because they produce superior quality goods and services at very low prices. Developed country also have many contacts in the world market, so developing country find it very difficult to face competition from the developed country. A special role of the business and technology. International business give a lot of the importance to the science and technology. Science and technology helps the business to have large scale production. Developed country use high technology, therefore they dominate global business. Developed country use the high technology, therefore they dominate the global business. International business gives a lot of the importance to the science and technology. International business helped them to transfer such top high in technology to the developing country. High in technology to the developing country. International restriction. International business faces many restrictions on the inflow and the outflow of the capital, technology and goods. Many governments don't allow international business to enter their country. They have many trade blocks, tariff barriers, foreign exchange restriction. All this is harmful to the international businesses. Sensitive nature. The international business is very sensitive in nature. Any change in the economic policy, technology, political environment, etc. have a huge impact on it. Therefore, international business must conduct marketing research to find out and study these changes. They must adjust their business activity and adapt accordingly to survive changes. Importance of the international business. Earn foreign exchange. International business export its goods and services all over the world. This helps to earn valuable foreign exchanges. This foreign exchange is used to pay for the imports. Foreign exchange helps to make the business more profitable and to strengthen the economy of its company. It is the importance of the international business. Earn the foreign exchange. How to earn the foreign exchange? Without international business, you cannot earn the foreign exchange, and this will strengthen the economy of the country. Optimization, utilization of the resources. International business makes optimum utilization of the resources. This is because it produces goods on a very large scale for the international market. International business utilizes resources from all over the world. Optimum utilization of the resources. International business utilizes resources from all over the world. It uses the finance and technology of the rich country and the raw material and the labor of the poor country. This is the optimum utilization of the resources. It uses the finance and technology of the rich country and the raw material and the labor of the poor country. This is the optimum utilization of the resources, which is important. Achieve its objective. International business achieves its objective easily and quickly. The main objective of the international business is to earn high profits. The objective is achieved easily. Because it uses the best technology. It has the best employee and manager. It produces high quality goods. It sells these goods all over the world. All this results in the high profits for the international business. To spread business risk. International business spread its businesses. This is because it does business all over the world. So a loss in one country can be balanced by a profit in another country. The surplus goods in one country can be exported to the another country. The surplus resources can also be transferred to the other country. All this helps to minimize the business's risk. Improve organization's efficiency. International business has very high organization efficiency. This is because without efficiency, they will not be able to face the competition in the international market. So they use all the modern management technique to improve their efficiency. They hire the most qualified and experienced employee and the manager. These people are trained regularly. They are highly motivated with very high salary and other benefits such as international transfer, promotion, etc. All this result in the high organizational efficiency at the low cost and the high returns. Get benefits from the government. International business bring a lot of the foreign exchange for the country. Therefore, it gets many benefit, facility and concession from the government. It gets many financial and tax benefit from the government. Expand and diversity. International business can expand and diversity its activity. This is because it earns very high profit. It also gets financial help from the government. Increase competitive capacity. International business produces high quality goods at the low cost. This is the competitive strategy. High quality good at the low cost. How the high quality goods at the low cost can be produced. It spends a lot of money on advertising all over the world. It spends a lot of money on advertising all over the world. It uses superior technology, management technique, marketing technique. All this makes it more competitive. So it can fight competition from the foreign company. International Monetary Fund. The International Monetary Fund is an international organization that was created on the July 22, 1994 at the Bretton Woods Conference and came into existence on December 27, 1945 when 29 countries signed the article of the agreement. It originally had the 5 members, 45 members. International Monetary Fund. The international stated goal was to stabilize exchange rate and assist in the reconstruction of the world's international payment system post-World War II. Countries contribute money to pull through a quota system from which the country with the payments imbalances can borrow funds temporarily. Through this activity and others such as surveillance of its members' economy and policy, the IMF works to improve the economies of its member country. The IMF describes itself as an organization of the 188 country, working of the foster global monetary cooperation, secure financial stability, facilitate international trade, promote high employment and sustainable economic growth, and reduce poverty around the world. The organization's stated objectives are to promote international economic cooperation, international trade, employment, and exchange rate stability, include by making financial resources available to the member country to meet the balance of the payment needs. Its headquarters is in Washington, D.C., United States. Function. The IMF works to foster global growth and economic stability. It provides policy advice and financing to members in the economic difficulty and also work with the developing nation to help them achieve a macroeconomic stability and the reduce poverty. The rationale for this is that the private international capital market function imperfectly and many countries have limited access to the financial market. Such market imperfection, together with the balance of the payment financing, provide the justification for the official financing, without which many countries could only correct large external payment imbalances through the measures with the adverse effect on both national and the international economic prosperity. The IMF can provide other sources of the financing to countries in need that would not be available in the absence of an economic stabilization program supported by the fund. Upon initial IMF formation, its two primary functions were to observe the fixed exchange rate arrangement between the country, thus helping national government manage their exchange rates and allowing this government to prioritize economic growth and to provide short-term capital to aid the balance of the payment. This assistance has meant to prevent the spread of the international economic crisis. The fund also intended to help mend the pieces of the international economy post and the Great Depression and the World War II. The IMF's role was fundamentally altered after the floating exchange rates post 1971. It shifted to examining the economic policy of country with the IMF loan agreement to determine if a shortage of the capital was due to economic fluctuation or economic policy. The IMF also reached what type of the government policy would ensure economic recovery. The new challenge is to promote and implement policy that reduces the frequency of the crisis among the emerging market countries, especially the middle income countries that are open to the massive capital outflow. Rather than maintaining a position of the oversight of the only exchange rate, their function becomes one of the surveillance of the overall macroeconomic performance of its member country. The role becomes a lot more effective because the IMF now manages economic policy instead of the just exchange rate. In addition, the IMF negates conditions on lending and loans under their policy of the conditionality, which was established in the 1950s. Low-income country can borrow on the occasional terms, which means there is a period of time with no interest rates through the extended credit facility, the standard credit facility, and the rapid credit facility. Non-concessional loans, which include interest rates, are provided mainly through the standard by the arrangement and flexible credit line. The precautionary and liquidity line, PLL, and the extended funded facility. The IMF provides emergency assistance via the newly introduced rapid financing instrument to all its members facing urgent balance on the payment needs. World Bank. The World Bank is an international financing institution that provides loan to the developing country for the capital program. The World Bank's official goal is the reduction of the poverty. According to the World Bank's articles of the agreement, as amended, effective 16 January 1989, all of its decisions must be guided by the commitment to promote foreign investment, international trade, and facilitate capital investment. The World Bank differs from the World Bank Group in that World Bank comprises only two institutions, the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, IBRD, and the International Development Association, whereas the latter incorporates these two in the addition to three more: International Finance Corporation, IFC, Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency, MIGA, and the International Center for Settlement of the Investment Dispute, ICSD. The World Bank is one of the four institutions created at the Bretton Woods Conference in the 1944. The International Monetary Fund, a related institution, is another. Delegates from the many countries attended the Bretton Woods Conference. The most powerful country in attendance were the United States and United Kingdom, which dominated negotiations. Although both are based in the Washington, D.C., and the World Bank is traditionally headed by the citizen of the United States, while the IMF is led by the European citizen. World Bank is traditionally headed by the citizen of the United States, while the IMF is led by the European citizen. Features of the World Bank: eradicate extreme poverty and the hunger. From 1990 through the 2004, the proportion of the people living in the extreme poverty fell from the almost a third to less than a fifth. Although results vary widely within regions and the country, the trend indicates that the world as a whole can meet the goal of the halving the percentage of the people living in the poverty. Africa's poverty, however, is expected to rise, and most of the 36 countries where 90% of the world's under children live are in Africa. Less than a quarter of the country are on track of the achieving the goal of the halving under nutrition. Achieve universal primary condition. The number of children in school in developing country increased from 80% to the 91 to the 88% in 2005. Still about the 72 million children of the primary school age, 57% of them girls, were not being educated as of the 2005. Promote gender equality. The tide is turning slowly for women in the labor market. Yet far women than the net worldwide, more than 60% are contributing but unpaid family workers. The World Bank Group Gender Action Plan was created to advance women's economic empowerment and promote share growth. Reduce child mortality. There is somewhat improvement in the survival rates globally. Accelerated improvements are needed most urgently in South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa. Estimated 10 million plus children under 5 died in the 2005. Most of their deaths were from the preventable causes. Improve material health. Almost the entire 500,000 women who die during the pregnancy or the children every year live in the Sub-Saharan Africa and Asia. There are numerous causes of the maternal death and require a variety of the healthcare intervention to be made widely accessible. Combat HIV/AIDS, malaria, and other diseases. Annual numbers of the new HIV infection and AIDS deaths have fallen, but the number of the people living with HIV continues to grow. In the 8 worst hit Southern Africa country, prevalence is the above 15%. Treatment has increased globally, but still meets only 30% of the needs, with wide variation across country. AIDS remains the leading cause of the death in the Sub-Saharan Africa. There are 300 to 50 million cases of the malaria each year, leading to more than 1 million deaths. Nearly all the cases and more than 95% of the death occur in Sub-Saharan Africa. Ensure environmental sustainability. Deforestation remains a critical problem, particularly in regions of the biological diversity, which continues to decline. Greenhouse gas emissions are increasing faster than energy technology advancement. Develop a global partnership for the development. Donor countries have renewed their commitment. Donors have to fulfill their pledges to match the current rate of the core program development. Emphasis is being placed on the bank group's collaboration with the multilateral and local partner to quicken progress toward the MDG realization. IBRD, the International Bank for the Reconstruction and Development, IBRD, aims to reduce poverty in the middle income and credit-worthy poor country by promoting sustainable development through the loans, guarantee, risk management products, analytical and advisory services. Established in 1944 as the original distribution institution of the World Bank Group, IBRD is structured like a cooperative that is owned and operated for the benefit of its 188 member country. IBRD raises most of its funds on the world's financial market and has become one of the most established borrowers since issuing its first bond in 1947. IBRD. The income that IBRD has generated over the years has allowed it to fund development activity and to ensure its financial strength, which enables it to borrow at low cost and other clients' good borrowing terms. The International Bank for the Reconstruction and Development, IBRD, is an international financial institution which offers loans to the middle income developing country. The IBRD is the first of the 5 member institutions which compose of the World Bank Group and is headquartered in the Washington DC, United States. World Bank Group. It was established in 1944 with the mission of financing the reconstruction of the European nation devastated by the World War II. Together, the International Bank for the Reconstruction and Development and its concession lending for the International Development Association are collectively known as the World Bank, as they share the same leadership and the staff. Following the reconstruction of the Europe, the bank's mandate expanded to advancing worldwide economic development and the eradicating poverty. The IBRD provides commercial grade or the concessional financing to the sovereign states to fund projects that seek to the improve transportation and infrastructure, education, domestic policy, environment concessions, energy, investment, healthcare, access to food and potable water, and access to the improved sanitation. The IBRD is owned and governed by its member state, but has its own executive leadership and staff which conducts its normal business operation. The bank's member governments are the shareholders which contribute paid in capital and have the right to vote on its matter. In addition to the contribution from its member nation, the IBRD acquired most of its capital by borrowing on the international capital market through the bond issue. In 2011, it raised 29 billion USD in the capital from the bond issue made in the 26 country currency. The bank offers a number of the financial services and products, including flexible loan, grant, risk guarantee, financial derivatives, and the catastrophic risk financing. It reported lending commitment of the million made to the 130 projects in the 2011. IFC, a member of the World Bank Group, is the largest global development institution focused exclusively on the private sector in the developing country. Established in the 1956, IFC is owned by the 184 member country, a group that collectively determines our policy. Our work in more than 100 developing countries allows company and financial institutions in emerging markets to create jobs, generate tax revenue, improve corporate governance and environmental performance, and contribute to their local community. IFC's vision is that people should have the opportunity to escape poverty and improve their lives. The International Finance Corporation, IFC, is an international finance institution which offers investment, advisory, and asset management services to encourage private sector development in developing countries. The IFC is a member of the World Bank Group and is headquartered in Washington, DC, United States. It was established in 1956 as the private sector of the arm of the World Bank Group to the advance economic development by investing in the strictly for the profit and the commercial projects which reduce poverty and the promote development. The IFC's stated aim is to create opportunity for the people to escape poverty and achieve better living standards by mobilizing financial resources for the private enterprise, promoting accessible and competitive market, supporting businesses and the other private sector entity, and creating jobs and delivering necessary services to those who are poverty-stricken or otherwise vulnerable. Since 2009, the IFC has focused on a set of the development goals which its projects are expected to target. Its goals are to increase sustainable agriculture opportunity, improved health and education, increase access to financing for the microfinance and the business client, advance infrastructure, help small business grow revenue, and invest in the climate health. The IFC is owned and governed by its member country, but has its own executive leadership and staff which conducts its the normal business operation. It is a corporation whose shareholder are member government which provide paid in the capital which have the right to vote on its matter. Originally more financially integrated with the World Bank Group, the IFC was established separately and eventually became authorized to operate as a financially autonomous entity and make independent investment decisions. It offers an array of the debt and equity financing services and helps company face their risk exposure while retaining from the participating in a management capacity. The corporation also offers advice to the company on making decisions, evaluating their impact on the environment and society, and being responsible. It advises government on building infrastructure and partnership to further support private sector development. The corporation is assessed by an independent evaluator each year. In 2011, its evaluation report recognized that its investment performed well and reduced poverty, but recommended that the corporation define poverty and expected outcomes are explicitly to better understand its effectiveness and approach poverty reduction more strategically. The corporation's total investment in 2011 amounted to the 18.6 billion. It committed 820 million to advisory services for the 642 projects in 2011 and held 24.5 billion worth of the liquid assets. The IFC is in good financial standing and received the highest rating from the two independent credit rating agencies in the 2010 and the 2011. IDA, the International Development Association, is an international financial institution which offers concessional loan and grants to the world's poorest developing country. IDA is a member of the World Bank Group and its headquarters in the Washington, D.C., United States. It was established in 1960 to complement the existing international bank for the reconstruction and development by lending to the developing country which suffer from the lowest gross national income, from the troubled credit worthiness, or from the lowest per capita income. Together, the International Development Association and International Bank for the Reconstruction and Development are collectively known as the World Bank. As they follow the same executive leadership and operate with the same staff, the association shares the World Bank mission of the reducing poverty and aims to provide affordable development financing to countries whose credit risk is to the prohibitive that they cannot afford to borrow commercially or from the bank's other program. The IDA's stated aim is to assist in the poorest nation in growing more quickly, equitably, and sustainably to reduce poverty. The IDA is the single largest provider of the funds to the economic human development projects in the world's poorest nation from 2000 to 2010. It is finance project which recruited and trained 3 million teachers, invested 310 million children, funded 792 million in loans to the 122 small and medium enterprises, built or restored kilometers of the paved road, built or restored 162 bridges, and expanded access to the improved water to the 113 million people, and improved sanitation facility to the 5.8 million people. The IDA has issued a total of the 238 billion USD in loans and grants since its launch in the 1960s. 36 of the association borrowing countries have graduated from the eligibility for its concessional lending. However, 8 of these countries have relapsed and have not regraduated. The International Development Association is the part of the World Bank that helps the world's poorest country. Established in 1960, IDA aims to reduce poverty by providing loans and grants from the programs that based economic growth, reduce inequality, and improve people's living conditions. IDA complements the World Bank's original lending arm, the International Bank for the Reconstruction and Development. IBDA was established to function as a self-sustaining business and provides loan and advice to the middle income and credit-worthy poor country. IBRD and IDA share the same staff and headquarters and evaluate projects with the same rigorous standards. IDA is one of the largest sources of the assistance for the world's 82 poorest countries, 40 of which are in Africa. It is the single largest source of the donor funds for the basic social services in this country. IDA financed Operation Delivery Positive Change for the 2.5 billion people, the majority of whom survive on less than $2 a day. IDA lends money on the concessional terms. This means the IDA charges little or no interest and no repayment are stretched over the 25 to 40 years, including a 5 to 10 years grace period. IDA also provides grant to country at risk of the debt status. In addition to the concessional loan and grants, IDA provides significant levels of the debt relief through the heavily indebted poor country initiative and multilateral debt relief initiative. Since its inception, IDA has supported activity in the 108 country. Annual commitments have increased steadily and average about the $15 million over the last 3 years, with about 50% going to the Africa. For the fiscal year ending on the June 30, 2012, IDA commitment reached 14.8 billion spread over the 160 new operations. Foreign direct investment, FDI. Professor Dr. Manoj Kumar have written numerous research papers on the foreign direct investment, advantage of the foreign direct investment. Foreign direct investment is a direct investment into the production or business in a country by a company in another country, either by buying a company in the target company or by expanding operation of an existing business in that country. Foreign direct investment is in contrast to the portfolio investment, which is a passive investment in the security of the another country, such as stocks and bonds. Foreign direct investment has many forms. Broadly, foreign direct investment includes merger and acquisition, building new facility, reinvesting profits earned from overseas operation, and intra-company loans. In a narrow sense, foreign direct investment refers just to the building new facility. The numerical FDI figures based on the varied definitions are not easily comparable. As a part of the national accounts of the country and regard to the national income equation, Y equal to C plus I plus G plus X minus 1, I the investment plus the foreign investment. FDI is defined as the net inflow of the investment, inflow minus outflow to acquire a lasting management interest, 10% or more of a voting stock in an enterprise operating in an economy rather than that of the investor. FDI is the sum of the equity capital, other long-term capital, and short-term capital as shown the balance of the payment. FDI usually involves participation in management, joint venture, transfer of the technology and expertise. There are two types of the FDI, inward and the outward. Two types of the FDI are there. Two types of the foreign investment is there. National economic situation is given here. Inward and the outward, resulting in a net FDI inflow, positive or negative. Stock of the foreign direct investment, which is the cumulative number of a given period. Direct investment include investment through the purchase of the shares. FDI is one example of the international factor movement. Importance and barriers to the FDI. The rapid growth of the world population since 1950 has occurred mostly in the developing country. This growth has not been matched by the similar increases in per capita income and access to the basics of the modern life, like education, healthcare, or too many, even sanitary, water, and the waste disposal. FDI has proven, when skillfully applied, to one of the fastest means of with the highest impact on the development. However, given its many benefits for the both investing firms and hosting country and the large jumps in the development where the best practices followed, eking out advances with even moderate long-term impacts often has been a struggle. Recently, research and practice are finding ways to make FDI more assured and beneficial by continuing engaging with the local reality, adjusting contract and reconfirming policy as backlogs and opening emerges. Foreign direct investment and the developing world. A recent meta-analysis of the effects of the foreign direct investment on local firms in developing and the transition countries suggests that the foreign direct investment robustly increases local productivity growth. The commitment to the development index ranks the development friendliness of the rich country investment policy. Difficulty limiting FDI. Foreign direct investment may be politically controversial or difficult because it partly reserves the previous policy intended to protect the growth of the local investment or of infant industry. When these kinds of the barrier against outside investment seem to have not worked sufficiently, it can be politically explained for a host country to open a small tunnel or focus for the FDI. The nature of the FDI tunnel depends on the country's or the jurisdiction needs and policy. FDI is not restricted to the developing country. For example, lagging region in the France, Germany, Ireland, and USA have for a half century maintained offices to recruit and incentivize FDI primarily to the create jobs. China, starting in the 1979, promoted FDI primarily to import modernizing technology and also to leverage and uplift its huge pool of the rural workers to secure greater benefits for the leisure cost. This tunnel need to be focused on a particular industry and so closely negotiated a specific term. These terms define the trade-offs of the certain levels and types of the investment by the firm and specific concession by the host jurisdiction. The investing firm needs sufficient cooperation and concession to justify their business case in terms of the lower labor cost and the opening the country or even regional markets at the distinct advantage over the global companies. The hosting country needs sufficient contractual promises to the politically sell uncertain benefits versus the better known cost of the concession or damage local interest. The benefit to the host may be creation of a large number of more stable and higher paying jobs, establishing in lagging area centers of the new economic development that will support attracting or strengthening of many other firms without costly concession, hastening the transfer of the premium paying skills to the host country's workforce, encouraging technology transfer to the local supplier. Concession to the investor commonly offered include tax exemption for the reduction, construction, or cheap lease back of the site improvement or of new building facility and large-scale infrastructure such as roads or the rail lines. More politically difficult are concessions which change policy for the reduced taxes and the tariffs, curbing protection for the smaller business from the larger or the global. The laxer administration of the regulation on the labor safety environmental protection of these on politic cooperation are covered and subject to the corruption. The lead up for a big FDI can be risky, fraught with reserves, and subject to the unexplained delay for the years. Completion of the first phase remains unpredictable even after the contract ceremony are over and construction has started. So lenders and investors expect high risk premiums similar to those of the junk bond. These costs and frustration have been major barriers for FDI in many countries. On the implicit marriage market for the matching investor with the recipient, the value of the FDI with the some industry, some company, and some country vary greatly in the resources, management capacity, and in reputation sees as common in such market. Valuation can be mostly perceptual, then negotiation and follow-up are often rife with the threats, manipulation, and the chicanery. Unit 2, globalization. Globalization is the process of international integration arising from the interchange of the worldview, product, idea, and other aspect of the culture. Globalization describes and the interplay across culture of the macro-social forces. These forces include religion, politics, and the economics. Globalization can erode and universalize the characteristics of a local group. Advances in transportation and telecommunication infrastructure, including the rise of the internet, are major factors in the globalization, generating further interdependence of the economic cultural activity. Technology transfer, also called transfer of the technology, TOT, and Technology commercialization is the process of transferring skill, knowledge, technology, methods of the manufacturing, samples of the manufacturing, and facility among governments or university and other institutions to ensure that the scientific and the technological development are accessible to a wider range of the user who can further develop and exploit the technology into a new products, process and application, materials or services. It is closely related to and many arguably by considered a subject knowledge of the transfer. Some also consider technology transfer as a process of moving promising research topics in a level of maturity ready for the bulk manufacturing or production. Technology brokers are people who discovered how to bridge the disparate worlds and apply scientific concept or process to the new situation or circumstances. A related term used almost synonymously is technology valorization. While conceptually the practice has been utilized for the many years in the ancient times, archaeologists are notable for applying science to the practical problem and present day volume of the research combined with the high profile failures at the Xerox PARC and elsewhere has led to the focus on the process itself. Definition of the globalization. Globalization, both as a term and reality, is not easy to define, for its scope is wide encompassing and it could be interpreted in different perspectives. However, Wikipedia offers a description of globalization in a general standpoint, which states globalization is the term used to describe the changes in society and the world economy that are the result of the dramatically increased international trade and cultural action. In specifically economic context, it is often understood to refer almost exclusively to the effects of the trade, particularly trade liberalization or the free trade. Such definition point out that the globalization is phenomenon categorized by have implication evident on particularly economy and social dimension. Furthermore, through the aforesaid, in the general sense, it could be noticed that the description is anchored on the fundamental of the capitalism, in particular the market-oriented economy. It is for this reason that globalization is of interchange with the capitalism per se and its concept, more importantly, free trade. The elements of the globalization, especially economic globalization. Economic globalization is characterized by the fourfold borderless exchange encompassing that of the economic output, that of the human movement, that of the capital, and that of the technology transfer. This is the globalization. Human movement, that of the capital, and that of the technology transfer, as is stated in the 2005. There are four aspects to the economic globalization, referring to the four different flows across the boundary, namely flow of the goods and services, free trade, flow of people, and of capital and technology. These exchange constitute the rationale of the globalization, which yield to the positive and the negative effects of the phenomena. Economic, the merits of the globalization in the economic dimension are evident, particularly in terms of the capital flow, influx of the technology, job creation, trade, and fiscal benefit, and the significant role of the private sector, competition, private elevation, and sustainable growth, while the demerits corresponding to the aforesaid merit are apparently the dependence of the developing and the undeveloped country on the foreign capital. Environmental degradation brought about by the technology, temporary and short-term jobs, the debt burden being experienced by developing and the underdeveloped country as a result of the fiscal balancing, the steady compliance on the quality standard demanded on the same country, the frequent occurrence of the massive capital flight, especially in fledgling economy, too much privatization, unfair competition, continuing unemployed state for the destitute and unstable economic growth. International business theory. Some of the most important theory of the international business are given here. The absolute advantage theory. The absolute advantage theory given by the Adam Smith in the 1776. According to the absolute advantage theory, each country always finds some absolute advantage over the other country in production of a particular good or the services, simply because some countries have natural advantage of the cheap labor, skilled labor, mineral resources, fertile land, etc. These countries are able to produce some specific type of the commodity at the cheaper price as compared to the others. So each country specialization in production of the particular commodity. For example, India finds absolute advantage in the production of the silk saree due to availability of the skilled laborers in the field. So India can easily export silk saree to the other nation and import those goods in which the other country find absolute advantage. But this theory is not able to justify all aspects of the international business. This theory leaves no scope of the international business for those countries that are having absolute advantage in all fields or for those countries that are having no absolute advantage in any field. The comparative cost theory. After 40 years of the absolute advantage theory, in order to provide the full justification of the international business, David Ricardo presented the Richardman model, comparative cost theory. According to the comparative cost theory, two countries should do business with each other, or if one country is having the advantage in the ability to producing one good relative to the other good as compared to some other country's relative ability of producing same good. It can be well understood by taking an illustration. If USA could produce 25 bottles of the wine and 50 pounds of the beef by using all of its production resources, and France could yield 150 bottles of wine and 60 pounds of the beef by using the same resources, then according to the absolute advantage theory, France finds clear advantage over USA in the production of both beef and wine. So there should not be any business activity between the two countries. But this is not the case according to the comparative cost theory. Comparative cost theory suggests relative comparing of the beef and wine production. In relative comparing, we can find that the France sacrificed 2.5 bottles of the wine for producing each pound of the beef, 150 by 60, and USA sacrificed 0.5 bottles of the wine for producing each pound of the beef. So we can see that production of beef is more expensive in France as compared to USA. Comparative cost theory suggests USA to import wine from the France instead of producing it, and in similar manner, theory suggests France to import beef from the USA instead of producing it. Opportunity cost theory. The opportunity cost theory was proposed by the Gottfried Habler in 1959. The opportunity cost is the value of the alternative which have to be foregone in order to obtain a particular thing. For example, Rs 1000 is invested in equity Rama News Limited and earned a dividend of the 6% in 1999. The opportunity cost of this investment is 10% interest, and had this amount been deposited in a commercial bank for 1 year term. Another example is that India produces textile garments by utilizing its human resources worth of the Rs 1 billion export to the US in 1999. The opportunity cost of this project had India developed software packages by utilizing the same human resources and exported the same to the USA in 1999. The worth of the export would have been less than 10 billion. Opportunity cost approach specify the cost in terms of the value of the alternatives which have to be foregone in order to fulfill a specific art. Thus, this theory provides the basis for the international business in terms of exporting a particular product rather than other products. The previous example suggests that it would be profitable for India to develop and export software package rather than textile garment to the USA. Unit third, trade barriers, tariff and non-tariff barriers. Non-tariff barriers to the trade are trade barriers that restrict imports but are not in the usual form of a tariff. Some common examples of the non-tariff barrier to trade are the anti-dumping measures and to continuing duty, which through the call for the non-tariff barriers have the effect of the tariff once they are enacted. Their use has risen sharply after the WTO rule led to a very significant reduction in the tariff use. Some non-tariff trade barriers are expressly permitted in very limited circumstances when they are deemed necessary to protect health, safety, sanitation, and the depletable natural resources. In other forms, they are criticized as a means of the evade free trade rules such as a World Trade Organization, WTO, European Union, or the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, that restrict the use of the tariff. Some of the non-tariff barriers are not directly related to the foreign economic regulation, but nevertheless have a significant impact on the foreign economic activity and foreign trade between the country. Trade between countries is referred to trade in the goods, services, and factors of the production. Non-tariff barriers to the trade include import quota, special licenses, unreasonable standards for the quality of the goods, bureaucratic delay, and custom export restriction, limiting the activity of the state trading export subsidy, countervailing duty, technical barriers to the trade, sanitary and the phytosanitary measures, rules of the origin, etc. Sometimes in this list, they include macroeconomic measures affecting trade. Non-tariff barriers to the trade. Non-tariff barriers to trade refers to the restriction that result from the provision, conditions, or the specific market requirement that make importation or exportation of the product difficult and or costly. Non-tariff barriers also include unjustified and or imported application of the non-tariff measures such as sanitary measures and other technical barriers to the trade. NTB arise from the different measures taken by the government and authority in the form of the governmental law, regulation, policy, condition, restriction, or the specific requirement, and provide sector business practices or provision that protect the domestic industry from the foreign competition. Example of non-tariff barrier. Non-tariff barrier to trade can arise from import bans, general or product-specific quota, complex discriminatory rule of the origin, quality condition imposed by the importing country on the exporting country, unjustified sanitary and the phytosanitary conditions, unreasonable, unjustified packaging, labeling, and product standards, complex regulatory environment, determination of legality of an exporting country by the importing country, determination of eligibility of an exporting establishment for a company by the importing company, additional trade document like the certificate of origin, certificate of the authenticity, etc. Occupational safety and the health regulation, employment law, import licenses, state subsidy, procurement, trading, and state ownership, export subsidy, fixation of a minimum import prices, product classification, quota shares, multiplicity and control of the foreign exchange market, inadequate infrastructure by national policy, overvalued currency, restrictive licenses, seasonal import regimes, corrupt and legal custom procedures. Structure of the global organization. An organizational structure consists of activities such as a task allocation, coordination, and supervision, which are directed toward the achievement of the organizational aim. It can also be considered as the viewing glass or perspective through which the individual see their organization and its environment. Organizations are a variant of the cluster entity. An organization can be structured in many different ways, depending on their objective. The structure of an organization will determine the modes in which it operates and performs. Organizational structure allow the expressed allocation of responsibility for the different functions and process to different entities such as the branch, department, work group, and individuals. Organizational structure affect organizational action in two big ways. First, it provides the foundation on which the standard operating procedure and routine rest. Second, it determines which individual get to participate in which the decision-making process and thus to what extent their views shape the organization's action. Managing cultural diversity in the workplace. Developing cultural competition result in an ability to understand, communicate with, and effectively interact with people across culture and work with the varying culture calendar. While there are myriad culture variation, here are some essential to the workplace. Communication. Providing information accurately and promptly is crucial to the effective work and the team performance. This is particularly important when a project is troubled and needs immediate corrective action. However, people from the different cultures vary in how, for example, they relate to the bad way. People from the some Asian culture are reluctant to the give supervisor bad news, while those from other culture may exaggerate it. Team building. Some culture like the United States are individualistic and people want to go it alone. Other cultures value cooperation within and among the other teams. Team building business can become more problematic as teams as compromised of the people from a mix of these cultural types. Effective cross-cultural team building is essential to benefiting from the potential advantage of the cultural diversity in the workplace. Time. Cultures differ in how they view time. For example, they differ in the balance between the work and family life and the workplace mix between the work and social behavior. Other differences include the perception of the overtime or even the exact meaning of a deadline. Different perception of the time can cause a great misunderstanding and mishap in the workplace, especially with scheduling and deadline. Perception of the time underscore the importance of the cultural diversity in the workplace and how it can impact everyday work. Calendars. The business world generally runs on the Western secular year, beginning with the January 1 and ending with the December 31. However, many cultures use other calendars to determine holidays, such as New Year's on a specific holiday. For example, Eastern Orthodox Christmas celebrate Christmas on a different day from the Western Christians. For Muslim, Friday is a day for the prayer. Jew observe holiday ranging from the these variations affect the workplace as people require time off to observe their holiday. Cultural diversity calendar are helpful tools to ensure meetings are successful and deadlines are met. What is a corporate governance? Corporate governance refers to the way a corporation is governed. It is the technique by which companies are directed and managed. It means carrying the business as per the stakeholders' desires. It is actually conducted by the board of directors and concerned committee for the company's stakeholders' benefit. It is all about balancing individual and societal goals as well as economic and social goals. Corporate governance is interaction between the various participants, shareholder, board of the director, and company's management in shaping corporation performance and the way it is proceeding toward. The relationship between the owners and the managers is an organization must be healthy and there should be no conflict between the two. The owners must see the individual's actual performance is according to the standard performance. These dimensions of the corporate governance should not be overlooked. Corporate governance deals with the matter and the provider of the finance guarantee themselves of the getting a fair return of their investment. The corporate governance clearly distinguishes between the owners and the manager. The managers are the deciding authority in modern corporation. The function task of the owner and manager should be clearly defined. Rather, harmonizing corporate governance deal with the determining ways to take effective strategic decisions. It gives ultimately authority and complete responsibility to the board of the director. In today's market-oriented economy, the need for corporate governance arises. Also, efficiency as well as globalization is significant factors urging corporate governance. Corporate governance is essential to develop added value to the stakeholders. Corporate governance ensures transparency, which ensures strong and balanced economic development. This also ensures that the interest of the all shareholder, majority as well as the minority shareholder, are the safeguarded. It ensures that the all shareholders fully exercise their rights and that the organization fully recognize their rights. Corporate governance has a broad scope. It includes both social and institutional aspects. Corporate governance encourages a trustworthy, moral, as well as the ethical government. Benefits of the corporate governance. Good corporate governance ensures corporate success and the economic growth. Strong corporate governance maintains investors' confidence, as a result of which company can raise capital efficiently and effectively. It lowers the capital cost. There is a positive impact on the share prices. It provides proper investment to the owners as well as managers to achieve objectives that are in interest of the shareholder and the organization. Good corporate governance also minimizes wastage, corruption, risk, and the mismanagement. Unit 4, Global Human Resource Management Selection. Often one of the company's most expensive asset is the human capital, the human resources of the organization. The management of your human resources focuses on the recruitment and selection of the employee who can be success at their jobs and who will stay with your organization, making sure that employees' ability are optimally nurtured and developed so that the company can receive an optimal return on the investment made in these employees. Recruitment and selection. This is particularly challenging in a global optimization where one of your biggest challenges will be a finding, retaining, and developing a superior global workforce. ITAP knows how to identify the success factor of a position, which is a key identification of the superior candidate. Successful company know that the jobs entail that seek to hire those candidates who can more successful, effective with the lowest amount of the support. Well-written job description and competency model that clearly delineate success behavior make for the effective selection and the hiring. Understanding cultural differences in the recruitment process. The selection of the candidate, what motivates employee in the various culture is crucial to the success of global organization. Targeted interview techniques. In addition of the ITAP can support your selection process using and teaching you to the use behavior, event interviewing, or the targeted interview technique. While not difficult to learn, they are far more effective at identifying exactly what capability particular candidates could bring to your organization. This is particularly important when recruiting and selecting across the culture. Assimilating new employee in this competitive environment for attracting good global talent, company need to pay particular attention to the perception of the company on the part of the candidate and the new hires. A well thought out and extensive assimilation process often makes new employee more likely to stay. This process should start before the offer is made, and many companies have assimilation plan for at least the initial 6 months on the job. This is especially important in group and relationship culture as it helps the new employee feel welcome into the group and gives them time and structure to establish relationship that will be important to the employee as well as anchor their loyalty to the company. ITAP can support your development of an effective onboarding and assimilation process. Performance appraisal and the competition. Performance appraisal are formal review of the employee performance over a certain period. Generally 1 year, results of a performance appraisal can be tied into the employee compensation policy to the boost operational efficiency, ensuring that the highest salary costs are paid to the most productive employee. Developing compensation performance appraisal and compensation policy can pose distinct challenges in the small retail company. Performance appraisal is the systematic evaluation of the performance of the employee and to understand the ability of a person for further growth and development. Performance appraisal is generally done in systematic ways which are as follows. The supervisor measures the pay of the employee and compare it with the target and plan. The supervisor analyzes the factor behind the work performance of the employee. The employees are in position to guide the employee for a better performance. Objectives of the performance appraisal. Performance appraisal can be done with the following objectives in the mind: to maintain records in order to determine compensation package, wage structure, salary rises; to identify the strength and weakness of the employee to place the right man on the right job; to maintain and assess the potential present in a person for a further growth and the development; to provide a feedback to employee regarding their performance and the related status; to provide a feedback to employee regarding their performance and related status. It serves as a basis for influencing working habits of the employee; to review and retain the promotional and other training programs. Advantage of the performance appraisal. It is said that the performance appraisal is an investment for the company which can be justified by the following advantage. Promotion. Performance appraisal helps the supervisor to chalk out the promotion program for the efficient employee. In this regard, efficient worker can dismiss or demoted in this case. Compensation. Performance appraisal helps in chalking out compensation package for the employee. Merit rating is possible through the performance appraisal. Performance appraisal tries to give worth to to a performance compensation package, which include bonus, high salary rate, extra benefit, allowance, and prerequisite are dependent on the performance appraisal. The criteria should be merit rather than seniority. Employee development, the systematic procedure of the performance appraisal helps the supervisor to frame training policy and the program. It helps to analyze strength and weakness of employee so that the new jobs can be designed for the efficient employee. It also helps in framing future development program. Selection validation performance appraisal helps the supervisor to understand the validity and importance of the selection procedure. The supervisor come to know the validity and thereby strength and weakness of a selection procedure. For future changes in selection method can be made in this regard. Communication for an organization, effective communication between employee and employers is very important. Through performance appraisal, communication can be sought for in the following way. Through performance appraisal, the employers can understand and accept skills of the subordinate. The subordinate can also understand and create a trust and confidence in the superior. It also helps in maintaining cordial and congenial labor management relations. It develops the spirit of work and boosts the morale of the employee. All the above factors ensure effective communication. Motivation, performance appraisal serves as a motivation through evaluating performance employee, a person's efficiency can be determined if the targets are achieved. This very well motivates a person for better job and helps them to improve this performance in the future. Compensation, from the perspective of the employee, the money that paid to the employer in return of the work that they do is something that they need to plan for an elaborate and systematic manner. Unless the employer and the employee are in the broad agreement. We use the term broad agreement as in many cases significant differences in perception about the employee worth exists between the two sides. The net result is the dissatisfaction from the employee's perspective and the friction in the relationship. It can be said that the compensation is the glue that binds the employee and the employer together. And in organized sector, this is further codified in the form of a contract or the mutual binding legal document. Thus spells out exactly how much should be paid to the employee and the components of the compensation package. Since this article is intended to be an introduction to the compensation management, the art and science of arriving a right compensation makes all the difference between a satisfied employee and the disgruntled employee. The Malthus need hierarchy theory talks about the compensation being at the middle to the lower rung of the pyramid and the other factors like the job satisfaction and fulfillment being at the top for a majority of the employee. Getting the right compensation is by itself a motivating factor. Hence, employers need to quantify the employee's contribution in a proper manner if they are to get best out of the employee. The provision of monetary value in exchange of the work performed forms the basis of the compensation, and how this is managed using the procedure and systems from the basis of the compensation management. As the module progresses, reader must be introduced to other aspects of the compensation management, like the components of the compensation management, types of the compensation, inclusion of the variable pay, the use of the employee stock option, the aspect of the how is good compensation management leads to the higher attrition is discussed as well. This aspect is important to, as a study have shown that a majority of the employees who could company have inadequate or skewed compensation as the reason for their exit. Hence, the compensation management is something that company must make seriously if they are to achieve a competitive advantage in the market for the talent. Further, globalization has created global village where people in the different parts of the world are able not only to participate in the global supply chain, but also partake of the wonders of the cultural exchange and the assimilation. This has created aspiration value among large section of the people in developing country who now demand better compensation at par with the counterparts in the advanced economy of the West. Hence, corporates need to be aware of the complexity of the issue of the how much compensation and in what form that is to be paid to the employee, taking into account of the all factors. Given the fact that the most company in the waste outsourced to countries like China and India because of the more cost advantage, where lower wages in these countries provide the cost saving, the reckoning of the higher wage demand and the wage parity that occur because of the economic factors might obviate the advantage enjoyed by this country as per the outsourcing phenomena is concerned. In this context, it is worth noting that the corporate world over are feeling the pinch of the ongoing global economic crisis, and this led to the dispersed wages as well as the lower hikes for the employee in the last 2 years. Hence, the added challenge of keeping the workforce happy in these glooming times is something that the HR manager must take into account as well. The globalized workforce that participate in the global supply chain creates its one set of the challenges which make expertise being paid, hardship allowances to entice them to work abroad in the developing country. Further, the native workforce in these transnational corporations earn higher wages from those of the average workers in their country, leading to the ethnic tension and demand for the inclusion of the less qualified worker. All these factors need to be addressed by the managers of the corporation when they decide on the compensation. Finally, the very real phenomena of attrition because of the poor compensation continues to haunt the corporates, and the challenge of the retaining quality workers while retrenching poor performance remains a key imperative for the company. Hence, compensation management has aspects other than those that were discussed so far in this module, and this article is meant for the highlight some of them. It is hoped that the world economy recovers quickly and the boom years where the workers and corporates were happy working together come back to the advantage of the everybody. Managing groups across the culture involves the ability to recognize and embrace similarity and differences among the nations and culture, and then approach key organizational and strategic issue with an open and curious mind. Value culture, the dominant pattern of the living, thinking, and believing that is developed and transmitted by people consciously or unconsciously to subsequent generation. Culture value those consciously and subconsciously deeply held beliefs that specify general preferences, behavior, and defines what is the right and the wrong. Characteristics of the culture, innovation, and the risk taking, attention to the detail, outcome orientation, people orientation, team orientation, aggressiveness, stability, managing across culture, understand, appreciate, and use cultural factor, motivate the employee. Global mindset, strong culture, employee behavior, and reduce turnover. MNC strategy must address the cultural similarity and differences in their varied market. Globalization national responses need to understand the difference consumer taste, rational market response, national standard, and regulation by the government. Multicultural management. A multicultural workforce is one in which a wide range of the cultural differences exist among the employees in the organization. While a number of major and minor traits are used to describe cultural differences, the most common traits used to identify the level of the multiculturalism evident in a given workforce both boils down: age, sex, ethnicity, physical ability, race, and according to the encyclopedia of the business. Multicultural basis. In general, multicultural workforce is one in which the employees are the heterogeneous, many dissimilar in the certain traits. Particularly speaking, any workforce with two or more employees has some level of the multiculturalism based on the basic assumption that no two people are exactly the same. Companies vary in the level of the multiculturalism. Those that have easily detectable and wide-ranging cultural differences within their workforce are more often described as the multicultural company or the workforce. Multicultural versus the diversity. Over time, a subtle but important transition has taken place in the way of the workforce are described related to the employee differences. More of early 21st century organizations are described as diverse when the employees are the heterogeneous. Diversity is become increasingly used to depict the importance of the managing diverse workers versus simply or recognizing their existing. Diversity management is a well-recognized process of the proactively and strategically managing the unique needs of a diverse workplace with the multicultural traits. Diversity management In essence, diversity is viewed more as the way of the company responds to the workforce than the multicultural, which is more workforce trait. Diversity management includes cultural awareness, education, and sensitive training as a core element. Company leaders typically recognize that to get the benefits of a diverse workforce and to avoid common challenges, they must teach employees to accept and tolerate their differences. Multicultural benefit. People with the differences have a natural barrier in communication and relationship. Opposite act in a popular relationship, but people with the differences also tend to find more conflict in communication than people with the shared background and the life paradigm. However, diversity management can draw out strong benefits of a multicultural workforce, including a broader and deeper pool of the idea and creative development, stronger connection to a global marketplace, and better ability to adapt to the marketplace changes. These are the book recommended for the international business environment. Bhalla, Bhike, and Sivaraman, International Business Environment, annual publication, 7th revised edition. Rao and Subba, International Business, Himalaya Publishing House, 2nd edition. International Management, a Cultural Approach, Southwest College Publisher, Francis and College, International Marketing, Himalaya Publication House. Hibbert, International Business Strategy and Operation, Macmillan Press Limited, Goldsmith, Business Government Society, Irwin Book Team. Berry and the Global Economy in the Transition, Prentice Hall International Limited. And these are the website for the international business management.